It's December 8th, 2013. We're inside a Politburo meeting in Pyongyang. Jang Song-thaek is sitting in his usual seat. He is the second most powerful man in North Korea, married to Kim Jong-il's sister, uncle of the current ruler Kim Jong-un, and for years he was considered the young leader's mentor. Then the door opens. Uniformed officers walk in. They drag him out of his chair in front of the rest of the Politburo, with the state cameras rolling. 4 days later, he's dead. The message to the rest of the elite is clear. Under Kim Jong-un, nobody is safe, not even family. But the strange thing isn't that the regime is executing its own, it's that it's happening in 2013. 20 years after many serious analysts had written North Korea off as a country with weeks, maybe months, to live. 3 decades later, the regime is still standing. Same family, same prison camps, same system. So, what is actually holding North Korea together? There's no single answer. It's a system of ideological, social, and physical controls that took decades to build. And to understand how it works, we have to go back to where it started, 1945. A 33-year-old former guerrilla fighter stepping off a Soviet ship. This is how North Korea is still here. Kim Il-sung was not the obvious choice to run North Korea. When the Japanese surrendered in 1945, Korea was split at the 38th parallel. The Soviets needed a Korean to run their zone. Kim was loyal, he was organized, he spoke Russian, and he hadn't collaborated with the Japanese. That was enough. By September 1948, he was premier of the newly proclaimed Democratic People's Republic of Korea. The state Kim built was Stalinist. In June 1950, with Stalin's reluctant approval, he invaded the south. The Korean War killed around 2.5 million people. It ended in 1953 with the border roughly where it started. For Kim personally, the war was useful. It gave him cover to purge his rivals. Then came the personality cult. Nothing else in the communist world quite looked like it. By the 1970s, Kim Il-sung was no longer just a dictator. He was the son of the nation, the fatherly leader. The ideology behind all of this was called juche, self-reliance. Kim first used the word in 1955, but it didn't become a real ideology until the late 1960s, when his philosophy advisor Hwang Jang-yop turned it into a systematic doctrine. Hwang would later defect to South Korea in 1997. In a 1967 speech, Kim laid out Juche's 3 principles: political independence, economic self-sufficiency, and military self-defense. In practice, that meant isolation, closed borders, and a military budget that swallowed the rest of the economy. Then in 1980, Kim Il-sung designated his eldest son Kim Jong-il as his successor. No communist state had ever passed power father to son. North Korea was becoming a hereditary monarchy with a state religion attached. If you are enjoying the video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel and checking out my newest video about the Tiananmen Square incident by clicking here. I also have a Patreon and a YouTube membership if you want to support me more. Now let's get back to the video. The feature outsiders are least likely to have heard of is called Songbun. It's a hereditary classification system, and it's the reason why millions of North Koreans live in what the foundational study on the subject calls a form of slave labor. Every North Korean is assigned a status at birth based on what their family did during the founding of the state and the Korean War. The system was developed between the late 1950s and 1970, when the regime ran 3 massive nationwide investigations of every adult citizen's family background. Out of that came 3 broad classes: around 25% core, 55% wavering, and 20% hostile. Modern estimates put it around the same numbers today. Songbun determines almost everything. Whether you can join the party, what job you do, what schools your children attend, who you can marry, what medical care you get, even what city you're allowed to live in, with Pyongyang reserved for the most loyal. During the famine of the 1990s, it appears to have been determined who lived and who died. The class breakdown tracked closely with the nutritional categories that aid workers documented in 1998. It looked like the regime was distributing food along class lines. What makes Songbun so effective is that it's almost invisible from the outside and almost impossible to escape from the inside. On top of Songbun sits one of the most thorough internal security systems ever built. At the top are 2 main agencies. The Ministry of Public Security is the national police, with around 210,000 personnel. The State Security Department is the secret police. It runs counterintelligence, monitors political reliability, and operates the political prison camps. It employs around 50,000 personnel and reports directly to the supreme leader. But the most distinctive part of the system isn't at the top, it's at the neighborhood level. It's called the Inminban, or People's Unit. Every North Korean household belongs to one. 30 to 40 households, each headed by an Inminbanjang, almost always a politically reliable middle-aged woman. She conducts surprise visits at night. She reports anything suspicious. On top of that, the State Security Department runs its own network of informants. Estimates run into the hundreds of thousands. Some go as high as 1 million. For those who fall foul of the system, the destination is the Kwanliso, the political prison camps. As of 2013, an estimated 80,000 to 120,000 people were being held inside them. The UN has documented systematic starvation, torture, forced labor, and summary executions, concluding that the conditions had no parallel in the contemporary world. For decades, North Korea's economy had been heavily dependent on Soviet subsidies. Then, in the second half of the 1980s, Gorbachev's reforms cut off the lifeline. Soviet petroleum exports to North Korea fell from around 500,000 metric tons in 1989 to 30,000 in 1992. In December 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved. The new Russian government demanded hard currency for what had previously been given on credit. North Korea simply could not pay. The shock was catastrophic. Energy imports fell by 75%, factories shut down. By the early 1990s, the country was producing only about 60% of the food it needed. And in 1991, the state launched a propaganda campaign with the slogan, "Let's eat 2 meals a day." Then, in July 1994, Kim Il-sung died. His son, Kim Jong-il, was now in charge. The famine that followed, which the regime called the Arduous March, peaked in 1996 and 97. The most careful academic estimates put the death toll at 600,000 to 1 million, 3 to 5% of the pre-crisis population. The state's public distribution system, which was supposed to feed everyone, collapsed entirely. Defectors poured across the border. Foreign policy experts wrote articles with titles like "The Coming Collapse of North Korea," no question marks. By any reasonable analysis, the regime should not have survived. But it did, for three connected reasons. The first was a strategic shift. Kim Jong-il made the military the central pillar of the regime. The policy was called Songbun, military first politics. The Korean People's Army got first claim on whatever resources the state had left. In exchange for loyalty, the state fed them while much of the rest of the country went hungry. The military stayed loyal. The second was the market. The regime let an informal economy grow underneath the dying state economy. Small markets called Jangmadang sprang up across the country. At first, the state tried to suppress them. Then it looked the other way. By 2018, there were at least 436 officially sanctioned markets. The informal economy now accounts for somewhere between 30 and 50% of North Korea's entire GDP. And the third was China. After the Soviet collapse, China became North Korea's only remaining major ally. By the 2010s, it accounted for 90% or more of all North Korean trades. Beijing kept the food and oil flowing. When Kim Jong-il died in December 2011, the succession passed to his third son, Kim Jong-un, then in his late 20s. Most analysts assumed he was a figurehead. They were wrong. Within his first 2 years, Kim Jong-un purged or executed several senior figures. The most dramatic case was his own uncle, Jang Song-thaek. He was dragged out of that Politburo meeting on charges of, quote, anti-party, counter-revolutionary factional acts, and executed within 4 days. Then in 2017, Kim's estranged half-brother, Kim Yong-nam, was assassinated at Kuala Lumpur International Airport with VX nerve agent, widely understood to be the work of North Korean intelligence. The rest of the Kim Jong-un era has been defined by an aggressive nuclear weapons program. 6 tests between 2006 and 2017, and he's continued to tighten internal control. Starting in 2013, the state ordered guard posts in densely populated areas and required residents to take 24-hour monitoring shifts. The COVID-19 pandemic was then used to crack down on informal markets and the flow of information into the country. And most recently, the regime has found itself a new patron. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Moscow has needed artillery shells. South Korean intelligence estimates North Korea has shipped roughly 12,152mm shells to Russia, along with ballistic missiles. And around 12 to 13,000 North Korean troops have been sent to fight in Kursk Oblast. In return, North Korea has received food, energy, hard currency, and military technology. In June 2024, Putin traveled to Pyongyang and signed a strategic partnership treaty. Bilateral trade grew by 54% in the first 5 months of 2024 alone. So how is North Korea still here? It's here because Kim Il-sung built a regime designed to outlive its founder. The personality cult, the dynastic succession, Juche and Songbun, together created a structure that doesn't depend on any single leader being popular, competent, or even alive. The regime that almost everyone expected to collapse has outlasted nearly all the analysts who predicted its end. North Korea is not surviving despite being one of the most repressive states on Earth. It is surviving because of it. Thanks for watching the video. I'd like to thank my Patreons and YouTube members for continuing to support me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel and checking out my newest video about the Tiananmen Square incident by clicking here. See you in the next video.